Do you ever stop by yet when you're on a walk and you just look at the bird looking at you or the squirrel looking at you? I don't know what animals you have near you, right? But when you
Yeah.
just look at a bird just looking at you, do you ever think to yourself, wow, he's in his own little world. He has a task. He's either trying to get a stick to go back to his nest or he's looking for some food. And I just sort of think like, wow, that's literally me when I'm by myself. I'm just going about my house, doing this, doing that. You sort of feel like we're all literally connected in every single way, apart from he's a bird and I'm a human.
I think about it probably. I mean, now that you're bringing it up, I think I probably think about that more than the average person. I tend to think about how overly complex our world is and all the sort of hoops that I jump through in a given day just to do exactly what that bird is doing or that squirrel is doing. You know, the squirrel's just running around collecting nuts for his family, making sure he doesn't get eaten by predators. And that's really what I'm doing in a overly complicated, stressful way by, you know, navigating my way to work in this controlled combustion engine automobile, you know, just to sit at a desk all day and do a bunch of mundane shit, just so that somebody will pay me enough money to pay my bills and get my food. And, you know, some days I think, I guess what I'm getting at is the reason I think about it so much is because some days I think I'd prefer to be the squirrel. You know what I mean? Some days I think I'd prefer to just have a simpler life. You know, let me just collect my nuts and go about my day, you know?
It's like if you think about what humans used to be years and years and years ago. See, apes, they get up, they swing, they eat a banana, they sleep, just like squirrel does or a bird, right? And then you think
Yes.
about cavemen, they sort of they get up, they hunt, and it's the same type of thing, and they eat, and that's it. Nowadays, our lives are so complex that we should be living lives like that squirrel, where he just has to get up, eat, feed its chick, and have fun with the other squirrels. That's what our life should be like. And yet, our lives are so complex and so stressful that we are creating our own problems. And I look at that squirrel, yeah, and he's staring at me. And it's almost like he knows. It's almost like he's trying to communicate, like he's trying to make himself look big and scary. He doesn't know that I'm not scared of him. He's just sort of looking at me like, what the fuck are you looking at? And I'm looking at him, and I'm looking at him like, you're not scaring me. But it's that feeling of he doesn't know that you're a big person, he's a small person. He just is just aware. And if you're a threat, then he's going to say basically fuck off. But it's
Right,
amazing
right,
when you
right.
think that little squirrel, we think of him as just a little bird or a little squirrel, or he's just nothing. But they all have their own intelligence. They all have their own calls. They all recognize. I was thinking to myself today, does he recognize me? Because I'm always going on a walk. Does
All
he
right,
recognize me like I'd recognize you in a
right,
pub somewhere if I've met you once? Like, does he have to see me 5 times to know who I am? Or does he recognize me like I recognize you?
right, right, right. I would wager to think that animals they will recognize you because I think we have proof of that with our pets, right? Like, you know, I think our cats and our dogs know us, and after a while, you know, they get either excited or like, who's this new guy? And they start to bark, you know? So I think most animals will recognize people, but like you said, will a squirrel? I think with probably things like deer, squirrel, things we would find in the wilderness, they'll probably know your smell better than how you look. You know what I mean? Oh, I've smelled this asshole before. You know what I mean? I've smelled this guy. You know what I mean? So
But
I, I bet you they do have a pretty good recognition system. Like, oh, I've smelled this Drakkar Noir before. I've smelled this, this cologne. You know what I mean? I've smelled this guy before.
it's a
But
very good point because when I approach like animals like cows and donkeys, I put my hand out so they can smell me because then they
right.
can sort of see if I'm familiar or not. And I always sort of say hello so they can hear my sound. So I give them
Yes,
two senses
exactly.
to recognize me, smell and hello, it's me. Remember me? They recognize that just like you'd recognize that your parents call, for example, or when your baby
Right.
chick is in pain and the mother sheep comes along. It's the same thing. But when you think about how dogs apparently they're colorblind or they don't see color, so their vision is restricted. Does that mean that they can't differentiate faces as well as we can? And then you think about animals like cows and squirrels and even like frogs. Can they see better or worse than us or a dog? Can they only see black and white like a dog? Or do they see really clearly? Like you don't really know. So there's so many levels of intelligence that we're never going to know. Just because we're man and we think we're the smartest, you can't dissect every animal's eye and then sort of build a brain to see how they see it, because it's all circumstantial. And like
It
for all we know,
is.
that squirrel can't actually see, and he's just using magnetic energy,
Oh, right.
like birds do. Like how the fuck are we supposed to know? But
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you're saying. I think with most animals that have eyes like we do, um, obviously over the hundreds of years, we've done enough experiments to see what they can see. We've like just through experimentation and study, oh, they can see color based on this, they can see shapes based on that, they can smell based on this or that. So I think there's probably some evidence to back that up. But like you said, I think our world in general is only open to the interpretation, to the perception tools that we have. And by that, I mean the world's drastically different to a blind person than you or me because we can see. Um, which is, I mean, we all know how somebody who is missing a sense, all their other senses become heightened, and that's their world now. But think to yourself, an animal like a jellyfish that clearly has no eyes, but it's a living thing like you or me. And there's some jellyfish that they say live forever, or they live for hundreds of years. They just regenerate and they die and they live. And I can't explain it. These are all things that I hear and just regurgitate. But but
yeah,
yeah,
there
so
was
so it's different, it's different for every animal based on what the tools they possess to perceive, That's kind of what I think about it.
there was a program or quite recently or something, and they I've lost my train of thought. Um,
Program. Well, we were talking about perception and being
talking
able to see.
about like we don't need to just see with our eyes. We have like other senses, and even though
Oh,
we
right.
can't see it, doesn't mean that we aren't using it. Um, oh, that's such a great thing to say. Oh, fuck's sake.
That's the
Anyway,
worst. I know.
it it will come back. But yeah, when you go up to animals, I've realized from going up to wild animals that they get used to you and they do start to know you, whether it's through eyesight or smell or whatever. They do become familiar. And there's so many like videos online now, like TikTok or whatever, where there's these people in like say Saudi Arabia. He's got a bear, he's got a lion, he's got a tiger, he's got an ostrich. He's living with all of these wild animals that you would
Crazy.
otherwise think, how the fuck can he's got a grizzly bear just cuddling him? So this thing about
Yikes.
you shouldn't go up to wild animals. Well, again, it's circumstantial. If you go up to a wild animal in nature and he's used to somebody or another animal about to kill him at any point, he's gonna be on alert all the time. Whereas
Right.
he's brought these cubs up, this lion, this tiger, this jaguar up, this bear from a little child, basically. And even
Right.
though it's a big bear, he looks at that human as he would look at another lion or a bear. You look at all the lions together, they're not attacking each other necessarily. You look at all the cows in the field, they're not constantly attacking each other. Whereas if another animal comes in that they're not familiar with, then they're going to be scared. So this human's brought up these animals, like people in America, they've got lions in cages and stuff and tigers and
Right.
stuff.
Right.
They're used to it. So we animals are familiar with other humans. It's like we sort of think that they are different to us.
Sure. Sure. No, I know exactly what you're saying. Um, it's I mean, there's always going to be anecdotal evidence to show that a person can raise a tiger, a person can raise a bear, but we also have anecdotal evidence, and I'm certainly just playing devil's advocate here, but I think we also have a lot of anecdotal evidence to show that there's people, men, women, couples, groups, whatever, that have raised wild animals where they've raised them from the time they were babies to adults, and then those animals attack people viciously. Like I don't know if you remember years and years ago, there was the woman who had a chimp or something who, ripped her best friend's face off, and she had to have like reconstructive facial transplant surgery and things like that because like either something to do with like jealousy over a cake, making a cake for some, or like somebody's hair had been done differently, or like something minute set this chimp off and obviously did irreparable damage. Um, we have cases like Siegfried and Roy where the tiger almost killed one of those magician gentlemen, if you're familiar with them. Um, I think we have a lot of cases to show in favor of both. You know what I mean? There was the documentary Grizzly Man or whatever the heck it was, where the fellow was living out in the woods with the bears for a long time, and I think his final video is audio of him being eaten by the bears. You know what I mean?
Really?
So yeah, all these things are out there, my friend. I promise. Like I trust me. I wouldn't give you bad information if I actually saw it with my own two eyes. But no, I think that animals and people and everything can live harmoniously. I think they should, but I think there needs to be that line of respect where we go, when animals do things like that, that's just a bear doing bear shit. You know what I mean? That's just a tiger doing tiger shit. Once in a while they get ornery, they're hungry, and they want to eat a person because they don't see the difference between you and a gazelle. you know, and it's good. It's going to happen. And I wish it wouldn't happen. I wish people would understand better and be more respectful, be smarter. Um, but there's videos of girls being basically pulled out of their cars on safari. Um, just ridiculous things where they don't give a shit, man. They'll pull you into the woods and eat you. They don't care. But I
Like,
think you're right though. I think they can live. People can raise them. It's just really risky business.
it's like when, for example, the stereotypical a staffy or a Rottweiler, dogs that kill, for example, like kill babies, for example. Now they say it's not the dog, it's the owner. So what you're saying is that the dog doesn't have its natural instincts to grab things and like rip them apart. Okay. It's all to do with the owner. And that's saying if you bring up a a lion, for example, and he doesn't know what nature is, then it will never have this ability to start ripping up shit. I have got a little dog, and it's never bitten me or anything. But if you start pulling its tail, I know I can just imagine her snapping at me. So
Yeah.
we've all got this like instinct thing in us. It's just whether we're used to using it. So if you bring up like a wild lion and it's never been in nature, does that mean that it does still have that ability to suddenly rip your face off at any point, or is it selective, or is it more under control because it's not used that? Or if you put the lion back out and then you suddenly meet your lion you brought up, say 10 years later, like the video on YouTube where they go back to the wild and the
Oh
lion
yeah.
recognizes them,
Yeah.
does
Right.
that mean that lion is now more likely to attack you, or does it go back into that mindset of when it was being nurtured by you? Is it circumstantial? Like, is
I
it,
think
or
so.
is each case different?
I think certainly each case is going to be different. Um, who knows that? Like I don't know how old I know which story you're talking about, and it's a beautiful story. It makes me
Yeah.
cry every time I see it. I'm like, I want to hug everybody in the picture. But
Give me a lion.
yeah,
Get me a
yeah.
jaguar.
No, I was just telling my girlfriend the other night that like I wish I could lay in bed with a tiger and like just be the big spoon and just like hold the tiger with my legs and arms like sideways. But yeah, I just think it would be so comfy and loving and like could you imagine I don't know if you've ever felt it and I haven't, but like I know what a cat purr feels like, so I can only imagine what like a tiger purr must feel like. It probably like
Oh yeah.
resonates through your whole body. Like it probably feels great.
Wow.
That would probably be amazing. But now I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, about the story with the the story with reunion of the man and the lion. I don't know how old or how many years had passed, like between releasing the lion and coming back. Not to say that that necessarily matters, but I'm just wondering if there would be a point where he would return to see the lion again, and maybe the lion was in his twilight and he's not as sharp, just like our elderly human beings are, and perhaps he doesn't recognize him then and would attack him then. You know, there's so many unknown variables, but certainly that's a beautiful story. And like I said, one of the anecdotal tales where it worked out. It worked out and it was beautiful and it made for a wonderful moment. I just don't know if that would always happen.
It's
I
true. It's
think
like
I agree it's circumstantial.
It's true. It's like dementia. Your grandparent knows who you are, and all of a sudden you go, "Hi, hi, mum, it's me. Who is this? Get out my house!" She gets a gun out the drawer and
Yeah,
like, "Who are you?" And
yeah.
all of a sudden you shoot the person, so that lion might come back and see that person, and they're like, "Hi, tiger!" Around. Oh my God! It's the same as the nan getting the gun out the drawer because she's forgotten who you are, her own son, because of dementia. There's this thing on Netflix at the moment. There's this guy who has a sanctuary of lions and
Is
tigers,
it Tiger King?
something
The
like that. But it's this
Tiger King?
guy.
Yeah, yeah,
He used
yeah.
to be a magician. And he does shows. He's got like 200 lions and tigers, and it's a murder thing. So this person who's like a lion activist, I haven't seen the whole thing, but I think she gets killed, and apparently he goes to prison because he hired somebody to kill her.
Right,
So
right,
you've
right.
got these people who are doing lion shows and it's captive, and then you've got this other person who's all about lions need to have freedom and a space to run,
Yep,
and
yep.
they end up going to war. He was a famous magician. I can't remember the show, but it's on
It's
now.
yeah, it's all the rage right now. A lot of people are talking about it over here. It's on Netflix. It's called
Yeah.
Tiger King, I think it's called. But yeah, no, I've seen it and I know exactly the story you're talking about. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So it's getting to the good part where now they're starting to film him shooting things and saying, "This is you." Her name is Liz, for
Daryl or
example. "This is
whatever her name
you,
is. Yeah.
Liz. You come and take my tigers away. This will be your ass on the log." Bang, 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 bang. And now it's getting personal. And
That's a good
now they,
impression, actually.
thank you. And they sent snakes to her mailbox. So now she just opened up the mailbox. There's snakes in. So now it's gonna get like now it's gonna become war. But are
Yeah.
you for animals being like captive, or do you think that if they've got enough space and it's okay, or is it never okay, or is it circumstantial, or is it just live your life for as long as you can until someone says you can't, and then kill them, fight them, go to court, and is it just life? Like sometimes you're going to get the good end of the carcass, and sometimes you're going to be left with the fucking tail. Is it just shit happens and just get on with it?
I think I think things like zoos and things like that have, certainly in my whole lifetime have just been another means of just capital gain for somebody, so it's always kind of been about commercializing and selling something and certainly too displaying animals, but the business is displaying animals. It's not there's nothing about a zoo, maybe more so nowadays because of activism and just, rallies and everything else, but like nothing about a zoo has ever uh, boasted about like what a wonderful life it is here at the zoo for these animals. It's just like, come look at these animals from sea life to birds to giant bears to tigers and, everything else. So like, uh, I wouldn't, because it's been a normal thing my whole life, I'm okay with it. But as an adult, having learned a lot, made my own decisions, and made up my own mind about things, certainly at least for now, uh, I think it's kind of like a lost art, and I think people kind of still do it out of habit. But ultimately, it is something that really should be abolished because, like I said, what are we doing it for if not just for somebody to make money off of it? You know what I mean? Like, is it really that important that you go live in person to see uh, a bunch of insects somewhere, live, or see snakes behind the glass? Like, especially with the internet now, live videos. Um, it would almost be more entertaining for people to, send a team of people into the Amazon, set up a bunch of like cameras in trees. You know what I mean? To either live stream or record live animals in the wild, than to ship them to the United States, to the United Kingdom, or wherever to put them behind fucking glass, drag your family out to pay too much money to park, too much money to get into the park, to wait in lines, pay too much money for a snack. You know what I mean? Like it's passe. It's passe. So I guess as I'm thinking and talking about this out loud, what I'm getting at is I think they should kind of just be done. Like I don't think there's any reason to have something like a zoo. Um, if there is such a thing as an animal sanctuary that is very humane and does a great job of allowing whatever the animal is to be in its natural environment and live somewhat free and happy and healthy. Maybe it's for the preservation of the species, maybe it's endangered, maybe it's something like that. I'm all for that, but not necessarily for putting them on display to make money, you know?
What's the difference between wild animals and cages, and then going back in our day where we had cows and they were carrying bales of hay to the next village, carrying bananas, or donkeys and sheep? You go back in time, an animal's an animal, right? You can't pick and choose like what animal you keep and what animal you don't, right? But
Right.
years ago, we'd have like farm animals, and they would, as I said, carry like donkeys, camels to the desert, and they would live in like close proximity. And you've got like a wild lion. Well, every animal is wild, just like there's no such thing as flowers and wildflowers. Like, where the fuck do you think flowers come from?
Right, right,
Outside. It's
right.
just
Yeah, right,
that's a
right.
wild
They're all
flower because
wild.
we
Yeah.
don't put that's a wild flower because we don't put it in supermarkets because I don't know, maybe it's not pretty enough or there's no demand. And these
Right, right.
flowers do because it is pretty enough or there is a demand, but it's all flowers. All animals, including humans, are part of nature. So why is it okay, for example, to have farm animals living in your village, say many, many years ago, versus a wild lion? It's again, it's all down to perception because a lion is no different to a wild horse, but then you put a horse in a carriage in a stable. So why is everyone not sort of saying about how every person who's got a horse, like a cowboy, needs to be free? Because that horse needs to be trotting around like the lion. In fact, there's lions got more space than probably a horse does in his little fucking box driving from LA to Texas, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah.
it's like people like, we've all come from small tribes, okay, and
Yes.
every tribe belief is different to the next tribe belief. There's no wrong, there's no right. It's like there's no God. My God's different to yours. It's just not about that. It's just you have your own beliefs, and everything's integrated these days. We see so much of other things, and if it all comes down to majority, so there's like say 500 buffalo versus 400 and say 16 lion. Well, the buffalo probably win because there's more of them. There's so many people for animals in cages and stuff like that, and there's so many against, just like there's so many people for veganism and against veganism, so many
Right.
people who hate this and hate that. Everything is literally 50-50. It's just where you focus on these people, and focusing on 4 people in Texas, 9 people in San Francisco, 12 people in California, and thinking everyone's thinking about veganism and everyone's thinking about animals shouldn't be in zoos. It's like you can't just pluck all these things and merge them together so it seems like this big deal. If you take away online, there's no one who's against zoo animals for fucking
No,
miles and miles and miles and miles and miles. And how
no.
does what I'm doing on this part of the earth affect you on that part of the earth? You know what I mean? There's so many issues in your life right now, like the leak in your house, and you're worried about a bloody lion all the way over there.
Yeah,
But
yeah, 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 yeah.
you have, for example, 7 fucking dogs in your kitchen with a cage so they can't come into the lounge and they're like shitting all over the place. It's all circumstantial. Like, people who have like say 10 cats, for example, and they don't
Oh,
let the cat out of the house. Why is it any different to having a big lion who's got
yeah.
more space in his garden than your little cat because you don't want your little cat to get lost or whatever? And he's like meow meow
Yeah,
pawing the
yeah,
window. That
yeah,
is the
yeah, yeah.
same as the bloody cat lion. It's just a bigger version.
Oh
Again,
yeah.
it's how you see it.
Yeah, no, you're speaking my language, sir. Like everything you're saying is resonating with me because like, I agree with that whole perception thing. As far as everything is an animal. So what's the difference? I mean, but just backtracking to what you were saying about sort of like the donkey or like a camel or something like that. Uh, I'm not a believer that like some animals were put here for humans. Like I'm not particularly a Bible thumper or I was raised Catholic, but I'm not really. I wouldn't say anything anymore. Maybe agnostic, but so anyway, I'm not somebody who thinks that like animals were put here for a reason or certain ones or all dogs come from wolves basically, and they're just domesticated wolves. So I don't know if camels are
Cats are
domestic.
lions.
Yeah, yeah. How about that? Or yeah, 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 yeah.
Or something like
But
that.
no, no, no. But so I forget exactly what I was saying because I'm simple
You
like
were
that.
saying that dogs came from wolves.
Oh yeah, yeah. They came from wolves. But no, I think I was just saying that like I don't know if camels came from something or if donkeys are just like shitty horses or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So, but I think I guess what I'm getting at is I think some of these animals are somewhat here for us to utilize, and if they're willing to live sort of a lackadaisical, simple life, let us feed them while they carry us and some stuff around for us, then they're okay with it. You know, because like what exactly are donkeys and camels doing otherwise? I've never seen a wild one, so like I don't really know. Are camels really just roaming the desert like they show in all the cartoons, just walking the fuck around like aimlessly, looking for puddles of water? Like I don't know what they do, but but I think there's also animals out there that are just monsters, like sharks and bears and definitely lions. Like these things are monsters. Like these are like if you never saw one before, like and you pictured a monster, that's what it is. You know what I mean? Like if somebody said, "Draw me a monster," you would make something with this giant head of hair that had claws and fangs and everything else. You know, so I think most things like that are just not to be fucked with. But then there are donkeys and camels that we can use for stuff,
So
and they
yeah, I
don't, as
agree.
long as they don't mind it, as long as it's not cruelty, you know,
I agree. It's like if, for example, wild
a
animals are
working
struggling for
relationship.
food. Yeah, if they're struggling for food, for example, and you can exchange services like, okay, you're a cow, you give me milk for my cornflakes, I'll give you a carrot. Because if you went out there, you'd have grass, and it's sunny right now, the grass is drying up. So, I'll give you food if you help me with the milk. Um, lost my thought.
Well, maybe too. Also, it's like a working relationship with things like cows because they would all get torn to shit by wolves. Like, you know what I mean? So it's like we'll keep you safe. Give me milk. I'll give you food, and we'll make sure the wolves don't fucking get you. You know what I mean? You know, wouldn't most wild cows get torn apart by something?
um,
I don't
I
know.
don't know,
I
but
don't know enough about them geographically and where they're originated. You know what I mean? And where most cows were. You know.
I just had like an epiphany realization, not realization, but just imagine you are living your life and we're looking at like a bear and a fox in your garden, right? And you're like, there's a fox in my garden. But to the fox, he's just going about his day and it's not this is your garden, it's just I'm going about my day. So the
Right.
perception of how we see something, I wonder how do they see it? You know what I
Well,
mean? Is it just like
yeah. Well,
a weird vision like that?
oh, as you're
Like
talking about it, I'm thinking that like the fox is probably like, you know, I'm in the wilderness, I'm running around, there's all these bushes, there's trees, there's no rhyme or reason to the pattern, and then suddenly it's in like this symmetrical row of planted trees, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, why is everything all plotted in a grid like this? Like, could you imagine what that must do to a fucking wild animal? It's like, who the fuck hung a silver pan out here to scare away the squirrels? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it doesn't even know why that there's like a silver. Have you ever seen something like that, or is that something that we
it's
only
like
do
a
over here?
scarecrow, like a
Yeah,
scarecrow.
yeah. Like they'll put like a tinfoil pan on the
Yeah, and it
fence.
will
So yeah,
reflect off
yeah,
the
yeah.
sun. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
and rattle, and it'll rattle and scare away
yeah.
like critters and shit like that, you know? But like, could you imagine running up on that? You've never seen it before. You're a fox. You're like, what the fuck? Why is there a city block right here? What is this?
It's like David Attenborough. You know David Attenborough is, yeah?
Who is that again?
It's just like this English wild person. But the point I'm making is that they've got cameras in the shape of a rock, in the shape of a fake fish, in the shape of an owl. So you've got
Oh,
wild animals like hunting around, and there's just this man-made rock with a camera in. It's a way to get close to the animals. Imagine you're an animal, you've come across this rock and it's moving, and you're like, that rock hasn't moved for 10 years. That rock's moving. Something is up. And they're like pouring it and they're padding it like, what the fuck is that? As you said, they come across like this tin in the garden and it's like, what the fuck is this? Like,
yeah. What is this? This
what is this
not
tin?
natural thing. Yeah, it's like completely not natural. Like they're only seen natural things: animals, plants, bugs, weather. You know what I mean? And now it's like, well, here's this robot. Like, but I don't know what a robot is. I have no reference point to identify what this thing is. It's just making me trip balls right now. You know what I mean? Like, that's what I would think. But
When I
no,
first podcasted, you had a NASA thing on. Did you
yes,
work for
yes.
NASA?
No, no, that was a grab from the Halloween store over here. For whatever reason, NASA stuff is like super popular right now, and maybe it always has been, but like, just about every clothing store you go in like the youth department or young adults, it's like there's all stupid NASA t-shirts, hoodies, things like that, different like SpaceX shit, you know what I mean? All that stuff that we're starting over here, you know. I'd love to get your opinion on that, but no, I got it at the Halloween store for like right after Halloween. As you can imagine, everything goes on sale, so I went and picked that up, and it's actually a nice little cozy jacket. It's got a nice
Do you,
like little interstellar lining and everything. It's pretty cool.
let's talk about Area 51, right? So, you know how people say they always see like round flying spaceships. Now, is that a perception based on what you think aliens fly in and based on you thinking that it might be some kind of alien thing there? Or are countries, America for example, making spacecrafts like a drone which is square, but a spacecraft which is round and it has a different purpose? So, for example, a helicopter or a drone is to hover as opposed to going forward, so it doesn't need wings. So, what if, for example, like a drone, it's a round thing, spaceship, but it has its own way of floating
Yeah,
to get
different
out of
different
danger
within.
from like a round shooting the rocket at it. You
Yeah,
know
yeah,
what I
yeah.
mean? So how do we know that there isn't just different crafts that are being created, but in a shape of a round thing? And if it's military, then you don't want other countries knowing about it. That's why you don't really know much about it because then they know your secrets or whatever.
Yeah, no, I think well personally I don't know what to think. I guess you could say I've studied it a lot in the sense that I've listened to a lot of other people speak about it who have studied it in that sense. Um, so I think my opinion is that just about anything we've ever seen on Earth has probably been man-made. I tend to believe that our technology was, and always will be ahead of what the public knows about. So I think just on a global scale, there's just things that we haven't seen yet. I think there's weapons we haven't seen yet. I think that there's craft we haven't seen yet. I think that there's possibilities and abilities that we just haven't seen yet because they're not, it's not something that should, could, or will be distributed to the entire public. It's not something that we need, just like there's probably been flat screen technology and, smartphone technology for a long time, but they rolled it out in 2008, we'll say, you know what I mean? So I just think that those sort of things are withheld from us. Is there a possibility that a alien craft or something outside of our world came here and that's what we have been reverse engineering and creating and testing on Earth? That might be true too. If you saw like the Bob Lazar thing, if you saw him on Joe Rogan or if you watched his documentary on Netflix, he was a Area 51 scientist who said he saw some uh, was part of working on a special craft. There was a element 51 or element. There was some new element more or less that they were working with that is the reason that this craft can fly the way that it does. It's not an element that we have here on Earth. I can't remember what it's called. But if you're into this stuff, you should check that out. I think you would like it. But
You know,
there's just a lot of compelling evidence to say that there has been alien craft here, and that's what we're trying to figure out how to use for our own advantage, you know?
apparently China went to the moon last week or something. Like
What?
they just went to the moon. So as you're saying, just because something is out there doesn't mean the mass know about it. For
Right.
example, doesn't mean that we think that, for example, governments and big corporations are the only people that can create planes, for example, or crafts. But for all we know, there's people around the world who are smart, who've got money, who know how to build shit, and they've built a round kind of spacecraft looking thing which has propellers or stuff that we don't know about. And just because it's not
Yeah.
been sold or governments don't know about it or companies don't use it, doesn't mean that private people aren't building their own stuff. Like
Right.
you can build your own stuff. You can put together a plane and a one man helicopter. So One man, for example, could be flying something that he's created. That's what people could be seeing. He could be actually flying in it. He could be remote controlled. He could
Right.
be taking the piss and getting people to
Yeah.
like we don't know. Just because majority don't know it doesn't mean that one person isn't creating it. Like think about it. Steve Jobs is one person. He was
Right.
creating the iPhone. We didn't know that existed until he put it out there. Who
Right.
says that you're not creating a fucking bomb? Like we don't know what someone is doing just because you can't see them. There's so much
Oh
out
yeah.
there.
Oh
Just like
yeah.
there's so many animals and insects and fish. Just
Yep.
because you can't see it does not mean it doesn't exist. Like there's people making so much stuff now, creating ideas and stuff, making cars at some point that no one knows about it until somebody knows about it.
Right.
So
Until
the,
somebody like Elon Musk emerges, you know what I mean? And you're
exactly,
like, oh wow, holy shit. And now he's coming up with all this different wild shit. You know what I mean?
I would
What?
love there to be spacecrafts, not
Yeah.
necessarily alien spacecrafts, but the stereotypical spacecraft because
Yeah.
it just changes everything.
Oh
Because
yeah.
now it's like you can't just fly with things with wings. Now you can
Yeah.
sort of hover and sort of tilt and do that. That just seems
Right.
to be cool.
And
Again,
then
is it our imagination or based on what we think spacecrafts are like?
well, some of it's science fiction. I mean, I think people like you and I haven't asked you your age, but I'm 37. How old are you?
27.
Oh, okay. So I got a decade on you, but for most of our lives, all the stuff that we've been pitched, is circular or triangular aircraft, with little green or gray people coming out of it. And so that's what we expect to see. Like we think it's, like excuse me, like just in talking about it, like do you understand how irrational that is? That we think that what's going to show up in real life is going to be like what was in the fucking science fiction stuff that somebody created, you know. But that's when like the conspiracy sort of comes into play, where you're like, is the art imitating something from life that nobody is telling us about, or stories from the 40s and 50s, you know what I mean, or 30s, 20s, whatever. Is the art imitating life, or is somehow life going to imitate art exactly? And a circular craft is going to come down, and fucking aliens are going to get out, and it's going to be like Mars Attacks. Gah, 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 gah. If you've ever seen that movie, that's another great film that you need to check out. Mars Attacks. Um, but like again, I think you should check out that Bob Lazar is his name. He explains that like he talks about like the disc crafts that supposedly exist. I'm talking about things that according to this guy, who again was on our buddy Joe Rogan's podcast, so that means it's all 100% legit, right?
Absolutely.
But no, he says that there are these like circular disc crafts that sort of hover up and then they turn on their side because within them there's like these cylindrical pieces, and then
Yes.
and then they like basically move
Yes.
they move reality out of the way. Like they bend gravity and they bend space and time so that way there's no wind resistance because there's nothing there. So you're it's more or less creating little wormholes to move through. And the example that he gave, like the real world example to try to think of, is like if you put a bowling ball on a mattress, and then like right next to the bowling ball you press your hand down, like you move the mattress out of the way, and then the bowling ball is going to fall into that hole. So that's more or less like the example he gave to try to explain what's happening with the craft and how it moves the shit out of the way so that the craft just beams through it, which
Amazing.
is fucking terrifying if
It's
you
like when
think
you're on a
about it.
trampoline and there's a football. Every time
Yes.
you move, the
Yes.
football rolls to where your feet is, and you go there, and the ball rolls there, and you sort of jump, and then it sort of bounces over there, and then you go there, and it goes there. That makes absolutely that makes absolute sense. And yeah, are we creating this definition of an alien based on what we've seen and therefore what we are expecting? Or has somebody seen what it looks like? And you know these like programs on TV, like on Nat, was it?
Nat Geo,
Yeah. Where
National
they,
Geographic.
yeah, they go to like a place in the woods where somebody says they saw something, and there's like flat grass, where there's a round disc of flat grass. Now, is that simply TV? Did that person come along and flatten that grass? Was that, I don't
Oh, the
know, a
crop
round
crop
car?
circles, like the crop
No, 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 no,
circles.
no. not crop circles, but they've said that they were abducted into like this part of the woods or whatever,
Oh,
and they
right, right,
go
right.
back with the TV camera, and there's like a
Oh,
ring of flat grass or burnt
yeah.
out grass where they claim the craft took off from. Like, how would one explain that unless it is just purely TV and made up and bollocks?
I mean, if it wasn't made up and they were trying to explain it, they would say that, whatever means the craft used for takeoff is what caused the burnout, the circle, or what have you. You know what I mean? They would say but without some means of testing the site, like again, what would you find? Would you find some residue of a chemical that doesn't exist here? Would you find no residue because they have a completely clean, efficient way of travel that doesn't burn carbon? You know what I mean? Like, do they have some sort of do they have a way of traveling that doesn't involve heat at all? Like I said, maybe you're just moving gravity out of the way and zipping wherever, like you're punching in coordinates from right here to right there, and it's going zip, see ya. Like, you know what I mean? Like I'm opening a timeline from point A to point B, and there's no need for any sort of push. There's no need for a push or a pull because you're just moving the information between us. We're moving the
You
ones
know,
and zeros.
for example, we are using fuel to do stuff, and as time evolves, we will obviously find new ways of creating energy, right? Let's just say that aliens were humans that were here many, many years ago, and they thought of an idea. Let's go to space. Let's create a plane. Let's go build a rocket. Humans here wipe themselves out, global warming, whatever, flooding, whatever. And essentially, those aliens up there are now a version of us, but kind of past generations. What if, for example, that they found the way to go from fossil fuels to this gravity thing, move out the way to travel? Does that mean that if that's the case, and we're sort of going back around and doing the same things that they were doing, that we are eventually going to find a way to do the same thing with gravity, where we don't need fuel to burn, that we can find a way to use energy and magnets and move gravity and do that? Do you reckon that is possible, that we can actually create something where we can use the theory of moving gravity and just sucking through the air? Is that possible? Because obviously, everything we think about, all the films that we create, Doomsday, take lives coming to an end, it always happens, but it's based on kind of knowledge that this is likely to happen. Talking about flying cars and shit like that, that's probably going to happen. But can we use the concept of moving gravity and sucking through time like the disc? Can we create that as man?
Um, so just give me an example of one of the things from, I guess, our past fiction and movies that has come into fruition, like the natural disaster type movies and things like that, like where
For
maybe
example, the
a
Matrix.
volcano erupts, or a hurricane or a typhoon or something takes out a good percentage of people, or things like that, or certainly, we have lots of movies that imitate life in the sense that they're action movies where people get killed. Innocent people are killed by some bad guy, and now a good guy has to save the day. And sort of life does imitate that once in a while, I guess, right? But you're talking about, like, can um like you're more or less asking, like, why haven't we done the fiction that we've created as far as space travel and things like that, and like, why haven't we been able to beam each other up like in Star Trek yet? You know what I'm saying? Like, why haven't we figured out how to just take you and teleport you to the next room without walking there? You know what I mean? Like, why have and I think what it boils down to is, like, some of the things that we've shown in film and in art and in television, they are possible, and they are things that we've created to imitate life. And uh, conversely, like the more science fiction heavy stuff has been our imagination, and we literally do have the world's smartest people working to break barriers and figure out quantum mechanics and shit. Like, we have people at CERN in Switzerland trying to collide electrons to create dark matter. Like, I don't even know what the fuck they're doing. If they're trying to open a portal, like some Stargate, like, I don't know what they're doing. But that, again, we said we weren't going to talk about that. But So I think what I'm getting at is like a lot of the stuff just simply isn't possible. I think if we could have figured out a way to bend time and space, we would have done it. I think we would have gone back in time a few times now to change things that happened, maybe prevent a few assassinations, maybe whatever, you know. I think if we could figure it out, we would. And like you said earlier, I think just because we're not aware of it doesn't mean somebody's not working on it.
So you don't think that it's possible to, because for example, Wi-Fi and data and 3G, it's small, like, call it electrons, whatever, magnets just sort of bouncing. Can't we
Right.
create like a big thing that we can go in, charge that up with energy in the same way Wi-Fi is transferred, and then sort of transport that thing using magnetic energy like Wi-Fi over there? Like, can't we create something that can use energy and magnets to magnetically bring us over there? Like, if you find the frequency of magnet over there, it will stop there when it becomes in harmony with the frequency. Like when, for example, you shoot a ballistic missile, you use magnets. So that ballistic missile is using a compass in some form to go there and stop there, right?
Right.
Imagine that when it got there, it was on a spring and it sort of just bounced and bounced and bounced, so it never crashes, and it slows down like that
Oh,
and it
sure, sure,
stops.
sure.
Almost like when they were landed on Mars or whatever, that something happened, like it would just had a cushion or something, otherwise it would have just destroyed it. Something
Right.
like that. Can't, is it not possible? Or maybe not now, but in time, to to create this thing about the spaceship going through time, but using magnet energy, the same as Wi-Fi, which is
I,
magnet.
I would say it's possible, but again, I'm certainly no expert on it. I do want to say that it's possible. I think I'm one of those people that thinks that if we somehow don't ruin the planet or blow ourselves up, that we could get there. I think it's a matter of surviving to the point, and I mean, obviously, we're seeing global challenges right now with like just trying to carry on with life. But you know, so obviously some things are going to stop right now. And like, I don't know when they're going to pick back up, but I think it could be possible to eventually figure that stuff out. There could be somebody not born yet that's going to figure it out, that's going to look at all the same quantum physics equations that all the other geniuses have looked at and toiled over their whole lives to try to figure out that if I just connect this one and this one, we can time travel or whatever the fuck, you know. But going back to what you were saying about like, you know, could we? Why can't we go from here to here and do that? I think they're they are figuring out a way to do that. It's a matter of transporting a living matter and non-living matter, where you know we are basically just bags of blood. You know what I mean? Like we're just bio animated biomaterial, right? I mean, compared to the pillow that you're laying on versus you, like you have a heartbeat and it doesn't. You know, and you're you and I are what I consider biomatter. You know, in the sense that we can live and die. Um, I think it's a matter of how do you transport that locker and the meat that's in the locker safely. You know, like if something's going to travel at light speed, that means that you and your particles have to break apart and become light and then be reassembled in the exact same way that they were when you left so that it doesn't change anything about you. You know what I mean? How your body functions, how your mind functions, where like are your brain cells going to transmit through fucking light? Ha- you know, these are all things that I'm sure somebody much smarter than me has thought about, but they're just coming to mind as I'm talking about it. Like how the fuck do we make turn you into light and then put you back together over here, you know? It's just a crazy thought, but yes, I think we could get there, but I think I'll be long dead before we do.
For example, right, you know, if you got a small magnet and you have, say, paper clips, yeah? If you go close enough to the paper clips, they will go whoom,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Imagine on a bigger scale, you've got a big magnet and you've got a metal scrap car. If you go closer like that, whoom, I don't even remember in Prison Break, right? When they had to break into the police office to get a laptop because it had whatever. They put a magnet in the car, right? And they needed to wipe the laptop because it had
Oh,
criminating
right.
evidence. And they used the magnet and it sucked all of the metal to the wall. and it also took away the data from the laptop. So magnet can pull stuff. For example, imagine a big magnet, right? That was strong enough to attract a moving car all the way over there, but it's so strong the car just goes whoom, right?
Right. So
Imagine you were in that car, okay? You would now teleport or transport at, say, for example, the speed in which a magnet does that. Now imagine
right.
in America, you've got a big magnet so strong that in England here, it pulls me in the same like time. It just goes whoom. It's the same
Right.
time,
Right.
five
Right.
seconds, whatever. If
Right.
I was in that car, I would have teleported from England to America far quicker than I would have got there in a plane, for example. So when you think about how magnets do exist and they can pull things like metal shit, if you put a human in the metal thing, you can absolutely travel that far. So that comes down to how do you create a thing with such magnetic force to attract something so far away? And when you look at it like that, you can understand how, for example, a spaceship can work in that same way, but not necessarily a magnet. As you said, it's moving gravity and it
Right.
sucks
Right.
through.
Right.
But
Right.
you
Right.
had a magnet force, which was say north, and then you had a spacecraft that was say south.
Yeah.
Then if you lined it up, it would suddenly go because it will pick up the magnetic force. Like when birds
Sure.
they
Sure.
migrate, they follow their north and they get to wherever they're going. But on a larger scale, like the pyramids, for example, they were put in a place where the energy was very powerful. And they all lined
Right.
up. Like last night, I was watching something how all the pyramids in the world seem to all be in symmetrical places where the energy is a certain vibration, and they
Right.
knew
Or
all
they
that
line up.
before.
They line up with certain stars, I think, as well.
Yeah, so you can actually create a magnet that's powerful enough, like a
Yeah.
scrapyard magnet, and it will suck it. And if you put yourself in that thing, you essentially could travel from UK to America if you created a magnet which is so powerful to suck something metal.
Right.
Just imagine, you probably die when you get to the other end because of the force. Like, but as I said, if you could find a way, like a bungee jump, so when you reach the bottom, it stretches and it goes up and it goes down and it goes up and it goes down, and the force comes to stop
Yeah.
gradually, then
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Could you create a magnet, suck you from America to UK, bing, 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 boom, and you traveled like you got to America in a second. Think about it. If you were to go across the ocean at a jet that was like a million miles an hour, then you'd end up in subject to there being enough water, you'd end up in America. So the magnet thing is like a jet, but obviously a lot more powerful. So I think that is absolutely possible. It's just a bigger magnet.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like you said though, if it was a magnet or whatever the means was, it would just have to be like you said, an exponential acceleration and then the opposite for the deceleration, where you go from 1 mile an hour to 2 miles an hour to 4 miles an hour to eight, but like quickly, like so that it quickly goes from slowly to like not ripping your eyeballs out up to what they call in Spaceballs ludicrous speed. You know what I mean? Where you're going, like where you're traveling at that whatever light speed or whatever, you know. And then when you slow down, it has to slow you down so that it's like, okay, a little bit slow, like half the distance, half, like exponentially slower, you know, type thing. But yeah, I am of the camp that really wants it to be a thing. I just with put it this way, with the knowledge that I've obtained in my life, I don't see how it's possible. But I hope that in time it will be. I hope it's something that I live to at least see the beginnings of, you know?
Just imagine the G-force you would feel if you got to America from the UK with a magnet pulling you in a car, for example. You'd probably die. But what if you were to, like, say, put yourself under anesthetic or knock yourself out? You wouldn't feel. You wouldn't know. You close your eyes, go under the knife, whatever, injection, pass out, and then all of a sudden you're there, and you're like, how the fuck did I get here? So
Right, right,
you
right.
could actually, in terms of the G-force, it'd be too strong to be awake to feel it. So if you knock yourself
Yeah.
out, you wouldn't feel it. But in terms of the organs and the blood and how it affects your muscles and shit, I mean, just think when people go to space, if they don't exercise up there, their
Yeah.
muscles just disintegrate.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Atrophy.
so yeah, again, it's like you have to understand that the world works in a certain way, the laws of whatever work in a certain way. We're not designed to throw like blood isn't supposed to move that quick.
No,
Um,
and it just doesn't hold up. It just doesn't. We don't hold together. We come apart. Like evidence shows from car accidents that at 80 miles an hour, our heads come off. You know what I mean? So, in a lot of cases, you tend to blow apart, and it's not a pretty scene. But yeah, I would love. Well, another hypothesis that some say in regards to space travel, UFOs, things that we've seen on Earth. A lot of people think that if there is a sophisticated species out there like humans or aliens, whatever you want to call it, living in another galaxy, in our universe, wherever, they think that there's a chance that whatever they send to Earth, like why would there even be anybody in it? Like why wouldn't it just be a drone? You know what I mean? Like why does there necessarily have to be a living biology in it? Maybe interstellar travel isn't meant for biological things. It's only meant for things we can make and things that we can create to observe. Because our eyeballs are very limited, obviously.
doesn't it make you? Doesn't it fascinate you how with all this flu stuff going on, how humans literally could wipe themselves out? Like if we didn't take action, right, and follow the government, whatever, and we all
Right.
stayed in the same place and caught the same flu, you could wipe yourself out, and then it makes you realise what's the point in any of it? What is the point in any of it? I'm worried about the Chinese being closed and getting angry. I'll show him next time, blah blah blah. Or my chips are cold at McDonald's, and it makes you
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
realise
Yeah.
none of it actually matters because if something like this could just change life completely as we know it, you think, well, what is life like? What is it? What's the point? Like we're just here by chance. Like just as you said, all animals will be doing is eating grass, eating twigs. Look at
Yeah.
all animals; they just eat. Think about it. You look at a cow eating grass. You look at an elephant, twigs. You look at birds, I don't know, pecking the worms. They're just constantly eating. So that's what the rest of life is just fucking getting up and eating. Um, so you think, wow, humans literally have created this illusion of what life is, but it could be gone at any minute. Like it's just nothing. It's just nonsense. Like just enjoy the moment. Makes you
Yeah.
put into perspective. Like what is the point in any of it if what we think exists, and then it's suddenly one man says you can't do that. It's just nothing. We're just animals. It literally feels like a city that's gone underwater, or an ancient city that had like what's that nuclear
Right.
waste, and like they've had to leave that city, and you
Or
go
like
back and it was just like
Atlantis type thing, like an Atlantis like was flooded or whatever, type thing.
yeah. Yeah. So life was there, children playing, supermarket, school, having glasses of wine on the grass and the lawn, and hi Barry, come for a hot dog. And all of a sudden, like that, they've all moved out, and you're just left with like houses and twigs growing through and wild animals and just nothing. It was like, did that even exist? What? It doesn't exist. It's like nothing exists. It's like, you know what I mean? It's fascinating when you look at it
100%.
like that. Like I go for walks and I'm seeing there's no one out. There's no fucking cars. There's nothing. And it's like, wow, it's just nonsense.
It's bananas. It's bananas right now, and I'm sure. I mean, I know we kind of didn't want to talk about it, but just like I imagine the UK is very similar to the United States right now, in that most major cities are, don't go out unless you have to. I mean, we're not like a lot of cities are not completely under quarantine, but I think Los Angeles, New York, Seattle, a lot of major hubs like that are they've had to bring in the National Guard and shit like that, which is bananas that we're talking about that. You know what I mean? It's absolutely fucking bananas. But going along with what you were just saying, I I think about this more than the average person because
Me
I
too.
you know I know that we sort of connected through my buddy Corey Castle, and I don't know if he mentioned to you, but he and I are both. I don't. He wrestles a little bit still, but he and I know each other through the professional wrestling business. Years and years ago, back in 2004, we were a tag team together, and I retired back in 2016 when I was about to become a father, and I just decided I couldn't jeopardize my physical well-being anymore. I had to be a responsible man. So, uh, well, I forget why I was talking about pro wrestling. Um, what was I saying in regards to? I know Corey because of wrestling. We were just talking about so I think all I'm saying is that like because I maybe was a part of show business and sort of that sort of dirty, seedy underbelly business, and like I was exposed to a lot of just shitty people and this and that, and like sort of a very selfish, backstabby business. Like, I guess my perception, it was a very thrill-seeking sort of business, a very individualistic, everybody look at me type thing. And I guess what I'm getting at is it was very exciting and it was fun and it felt like I was, as silly as it sounds, like I was making more of a difference in the world, by entertaining people, whether I was a good guy or bad guy, whatever. I was making a little bit more of a difference in the world than like what I do now, which is I use my college degree of graphic design and I work for a snack food company in the graphic design department, coming up with new designs, making changes to old designs, what have you, all sorts of things that are needed for a snack food company uh, here in the States. And, right now I'm currently working on a bunch of bags where we're making like changes based on like FDA regulations, new standards and guidelines and this and that, like where you put gluten free and this and that, like and where I'm going with this long story is that like I couldn't feel like what I'm doing is like less significant or important to the well-being of humanity than right now. Like I was talking to my father on the phone. We were talking about all this crazy shit going on, and I said, "Yeah, Dad, I'm working from home. I'm doing my very best to give a shit. I'm really trying to stay on top of making changes to these pretzel bags because, very soon it's not going to matter whether or not the bag says gluten free on it at all. Like we're heading in a direction where we're heading in a direction where very soon it's just going to be like, hey Oliver, is there fucking food in that bag and can I have some? Like it's not going to matter whether it's kosher or whether it's fucking, if the ingredients are listed on the bag properly or at the right size based on the NLEA regulations. You know what I'm saying? So back to my point, I think about this shit a lot, man. And now more than ever, this is something that neither you or I have ever lived through, and it's kind of scary. But I've taken a little bit of comfort in the fact that like everybody else has sort of had to join me in my psychosis now. Because I've seen this coming. You know what I mean? I've seen
Psychosis.
this coming and I'm welcoming it. And now everybody else is like, I'm like, hey guys, welcome to the fucking party. Okay? But
Literally,
yeah.
I think like this in terms of what would I do if world came to an end? I need supplies underground. I need to have, I think I've always thought like this, like survival of my own self. And yeah, when people start realizing there's no food, they are going to that survival mindset of how do I make a fire? How do I fucking rub two twigs together? And it's exciting because when you think about that's where we've come from, that makes me think of camping. And that's exciting. But yeah, I've always thought like that, the way others don't think. I think about stuff that's not there. Aliens, fucking flu taking over the world, apocalypse and shit like that. They're real things that are likely to happen. Maybe not the apocalypse thing, but those examples are real. It's just we never think they would happen. So why think about it? But actually, all the stuff that I've ever thought about in terms of having underground rations and stuff, well, I was right to always think about that. You never
Right.
think like you think, oh, you see it in films and and you think, oh, it's not going to happen. But reality is that it did and it does, and food runs out, and then what do you do? So I need to think more about that. Um, but yeah, it's true. Most people do not think on that, as you said, psychosis level, which is not psychosis, it's just
Yeah.
another way of thinking in terms of the psyche.
Right.
Because
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. And I think it's what we've seen really is just we've seen firsthand how the media manipulates the public and how people they say jump and the public says how high. And and I've been saying to my girlfriend a lot, I mean like we're doing okay here. We have food. It's not like we're out of food or anything, but every few days I'm like I say like should we go get more, like should we go get some more stuff, like, or because I'm worried that because people are not particularly adhering to the quarantine, and they're not really taking it seriously. There's a lot of people still just out and about. There's still a lot of people not being safe, and you know, is it going to get to a point where they say you can't leave? Like you can't leave your house. And are more and more businesses going to shut down? And up to and including essential businesses, because what's going on here, and I'm sure there is a lot of essential businesses. What they're referring to as essential personnel have to still go to work. People that work for food industries and certainly pharmaceutical industries, and I guess banks. I don't, places, things that we all still need. What happens when the virus gets so bad we can't contain it, that we go, okay, everything shuts down, and we don't know for how long? Then we're all going to run out of food, and the stores are not going to be restocked at that time. What happens then? Because I don't know how people are behaving there, but people are behaving ridiculous here. Like, can you get toilet paper right now? Most of the
No,
Walmarts here in the States are
no.
fucking no toilet paper.
It's
Like,
like, why the fuck are you saving toilet paper? You can wash your ass in the shower. How about
I said,
food?
say
How about
fucking,
water? How about
I said the
fucking,
same.
like, at least a bag of nuts? Like, that will last you dead for days. Fuck your pasty, yeah? Bag of nuts. Go back to the basics. We lived off nuts for fucking days until we found the next nut tree. Toilet paper. Fucking wash your ass in the shower. I mean,
Yeah,
I
you,
mean,
you soap and water.
yeah.
Like it wouldn't be comfortable. It's not what you're used to, but it would work. Just give me a fucking break. But no, I guess my point was is like this is how people are behaving, and our bellies are currently full, and we still have internet and phones and all our luxuries and amenities, and like we're behaving like savages, and it's not even like doomsday yet. Could you imagine what's going to happen when they're like, well, the factories are shut down, all the food that's out there is all that's left. Uh, I guess after you guys are done killing each other, purge style, we're going to come in and clean it all up, you
No,
know?
but literally, what happens, right? When, for example, there is no food left and it literally is dog eat dog, everyone's got a gun. There's no police because they're running. What happens when everyone starts literally killing people with guns just to get that food? There's going to be bodies all over the street. Like, it won't become fists anymore because it's gone past that. Because now it literally is like, right, fucking dog eat dog. People will get their guns out and start shooting people. And if you shoot him, he'll shoot you. You shoot his wife, he'll shoot your wife. You shoot your cat, I'll shoot your dog. It's gonna be fucking like savage war. Like that is a real possibility. When you start going to guns, everyone starts going to their guns. And
And think about
fucking
and
hell,
think about and think about this factor. Again, something else I think about while everybody else is busy trying to sway an election with their Facebook wall, and while everybody else is taking selfies of themselves, constantly, I'm thinking about how all this is happening, excuse me, and like you said, uh, the shit's going to hit the fan and everybody's going to be killing each other, especially because we've been engineered over the last 20 years to divide, 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 divide. Like man and woman, black and white, Christian and Muslim, Democrat and Republican, for abortion against abortion, pro gun against guns, for borders against borders. Uh,
vegan cat, normal cat.
pro trans, no trans. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm pro fucking everything. Knock yourself out. You know what I mean? I don't judge anybody. Just don't hurt anyone or children, and have at it. Those are my rules to life. Don't hurt anybody or children, and fuck whoever you want. You know.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it's
yeah. So my point was is we're at the worst odds we've ever been at, and we're about to see a global apocalypse, or so it seems, when we can't fucking stand each other.
It's true. Like it will be a civil war. So all the people will start fighting, and there's going to be too many people in that state. Police can't do anything about it, and you just have to let them fight like fucking animals. Just fight, and then half will die, half won't, and then that's the way of life sort of resetting itself. Like loads of trees, wildfires, trees die, new trees are born. It's just the way it is. It's just mushroom fungus goes to a tree, it takes it down, and it's just the way it is. We're no different. Cells divide, space, the Big Bang, it keeps going together and bang. Um, We ourselves, we're dividing, belief, 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 bang. Now there's less people, so less belief. So there's more people believing the same thing. Too much of anything creates, it's just the way it is. But yeah, it's true. It probably will happen in our lifetime, especially when you look at other countries and the civil wars. It's going to happen at some point in, well, places that have good governments. It's going to happen. Maybe not on a whole USA, but small states like Texas, and they come out and they fight people in the next state. That's going to happen. Has to happen. It's just
Oh
you're going to
yeah.
get so much tension where someone's going to shoot someone, and then they're going to shoot that person. They're going to shoot that person, and it's going to be a gun spree. Like it will happen, 100%.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously we're talking about this in a way that we don't want it to happen. It's just,
Yeah.
but again, we're just talking about how we're observationalists and we see it coming. I see it coming because I'm not asleep. You know what I mean? I hate the term woke, but like I'm not asleep. You know what I mean? I hate that fucking term woke or whatever, but I pay attention to what's going on. I know that. And again, going back to being a professional wrestler, because I was on the stage manipulating hundreds and thousands, or hundreds of people, thousands of people at times, because I was the manipulator, I see the manipulators doing it to everyone in the world, in America. Like I see everyone playing the role of whoever the fuck that's giving you the bullshit. And I tried to tell somebody recently, or just posed the question, another American, like in your lifetime, all the different presidents, every election time, and I'm sure you guys follow this too because we don't shut up about it, but like in rolls election time, and all the candidates talk about all the same talking points. They're for this, they're against that, but whether they're a conservative or a liberal, and then nothing changes during their presidency. It's just business as usual. You know what I mean? But not nonsense. No laws particularly changed. There's no, Obama instituted a healthcare act that most half the people hated. You know what I mean? And it didn't really change the world. It didn't really change how we go to work, how we get paid, or if the economy was better or worse. Like the economy goes up and down no matter who's in office. So like pay attention, everybody. Like you're just following the bouncing ball and you're not. Think for yourself. That's all. That's all I'm trying to get anybody to do. Please just think for yourself.
Yeah, it's like the laser and the cat. You're just the cat following that laser, and it's going
Right.
wherever you shine it. Just think, I'm not a fucking idiot. If I go there, you're gonna go there. I'm not gonna move. I'm just gonna sit here and look at you like you think I'm a stupid cat following your laser. I
Yeah.
don't think so. Anyway, I think speaking of seeing it coming, I need to take up my third poo of the day, and I'm gonna see something coming very soon. So quickly plug any podcasts and whatever the fuck you want to plug right now, socials, your WrestleMania website, whatever.
Yes, sir. I don't want to hold you up in case the situation is dire here. But let me just say thanks for having me on your show here, and it was nice getting to talk to you for a little bit during lunch over here in the States. But again, my name is Nico Sozio. I have a podcast called Struggling with Sozio. It's more or less just one-on-one conversations with a lot of my friends and people I've met over the years, talking about the hardest things that they've been through, how they've overcome them, and how you can overcome them. Again, check it out. Struggling with Sozio. It's on Apple Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and just about anywhere that you can find your podcasts.
Is it on Pornhub?
It is not on Pornhub. I'm still waiting to get approved
Damn it!
there. I don't know if my dick's big enough.
Okay, I'm gonna press stop, and I'm gonna say goodbye. All right.
Yes, sir.